Hey guys, I hope you're all doing fantastically and having a magical day. Today is kind of like a negative video kind of thing, but I think these are really fun to watch too, and it's really interesting to see why people think books are disappointing. So these aren't necessarily the worst books I read this year, even though some of them probably are, but these are just most disappointing. I was expecting more and I didn't get it. It's always the worst. So these are 14 books that I was very disappointed with. And I'll start with the first book I read this year and then work it all the way up to the now. So the first book is Every Heart a Doorway. I think the reason why I was so disappointed with this book is that everyone was telling me it was so good. People they're like die-hard fans of this book series, and I don't understand why. It might have like a cool idea because it's about this girl who basically goes into a magical world, kind of like Harry Potter or like Narnia, you know? And then when she comes back, she can't go back to the magical world, and so she becomes like depressed and she can't adapt to the normal world, and then she has to go to the school where there are loads of kids like her who also gone to magical worlds and can't go back to those and are trying to recover, basically. This book was just way too short. Like, this needed to be so much longer, and I don't understand why it's not just longer, because I think it would have been so much better if it was just more. It was just way too little for me. Next, I read Bad Girls with Perfect Faces by Lynn Weingarten. I read Suicide Notes from Beautiful Girls by her, and I really, really loved it, and I think that's why this was so disappointing. I really liked the mystery aspect of it and kind of the psychological aspect of that book, but this one was just so bad. I'm never gonna read young adult thrillers again, like ever. So this was just really bad. I hated it. Next, we have Wonder Woman by Leigh Bardugo. I haven't read anything else by Leigh Bardugo before, so I can't really speak on her as an author, but this was just really bad, and I think I might have been comparing it a lot to the DC movie version, which is just so amazing. I love that movie, and the Wonder Woman, she's so damn powerful in that movie, and so everything this character did was kind of like not meeting the expectations of that Wonder Woman, and of course the backstory is really good because we all like Wonder Woman's backstory. I think it's really cool, but everything that the author created that was like the author's work was just not good, and I'm so sad to hear that because I really wanted to love this book, and it was just kind of like flimsy and too like teenagey, like too young adult. I didn't like it. Next, we have Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. This is an epic fantasy, and I really want to love this book so much because I love epic fantasies, and this one was taking place on a ship, and the ships in this book can talk, which I think was so cool. Robin Hobb is a really good author, and everyone basically worships her works. Everyone likes her works. I didn't understand why I didn't enjoy it, and it's just so like tedious to read. It has some really awful male characters that are just incredibly sexist and just so aggravating, and in a way I guess you could say it's like well written because of that, but like frustrating to read, and it was just a lot of like politics and family drama that I didn't really care for because it was too much, and too much like discussion and talking about it. But I might continue with the series. I've been thinking a lot about it because I kept thinking about this book after I read it. It's like 800 pages long. This tiny little book is like 800 pages long. And I really want to actually continue with this series because you kind of got like dip your toes into the magic in this book, and I just wanted more of the magic. So if there's more magic in the next book, then I might read it at some point. Next, we have So Long and Thanks for All the Fish by Douglas Adams. This is the fourth book in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. All the other three books are like three of my favorite books ever, and this was just not living up to like those three books at all. This one was taking place at Earth, and it was just so strange. Like, I didn't get it. Of course, you're not really supposed to get his stuff because it's sort of like whimsical and stuff, but this was just too far out, and I didn't like it. I'm sorry. Next, we have To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. Not necessarily disappointed with this book, but I'm very disappointed in young adult in general, young adult fantasy. Lately, there's so many young adult fantasy books being released that aren't good, and I think that's such a pity because I do like young adult and I do like fantasy, but this was just not one of them. This is like a Little Mermaid retelling, and it had a really cool premises of like her eating male hearts and stuff and having like an octopus queen mother, but no, this just didn't live up to the expectations of the premises. Next, we have Smoke in the Sun by Renee Ahdieh. I really apologize for the reflection. This book is just way too shiny. This is the second book in The Flame of the Mist by Renee Ahdieh, which is like a Mulan retelling, and I didn't like this at all. I even had to listen to the audiobook while I was reading, which is what I have to do with really slow books. Oh my god. There were words in this that were like translated from Japanese, and then there's a dictionary in the back, but then all the words that were Japanese weren't even in the dictionary. Like, what's the point of having a dictionary if you're not gonna explain all the words? Like, that's so confusing. I couldn't get into the intrigue of this book. I really liked The Wrath of Dawn, which is the first book in her first duology, and it was so good. The second book in that duology wasn't good at all, and then the first book in this one was like okay, like was a 3-star. This one was just so bad. If you read 3 bad books by an author, I feel like it just became dark. Oh, okay. So I had a cookie while my camera or my lighting was charging. So when you've read 3 books by an author and you don't like any of them, then I'm sort of like giving up on the author. So I probably won't be reading more by Renee Ahdieh. I'm sorry. Next we have this duology, which is very well loved. This Savage Song and Our Dark Duet by Victoria Schwab. And I love her Darkest Shade of Magic series. I think it's so good. And to be honest, I didn't like this series. The first one was kind of good, and I think I even gave it 4 stars. But I think it's only because I am sort of biased when it comes to her, because I really want to like them so bad. And the second book was just not good. I was not following the characters. Not because it's hard to understand at all. I mean, it's more middle grade than young adult, really. It's mostly because it was just, I wasn't invested into the story, and I think the whole concept of monsters being created from bad acts is really, really cool, and I really want to love it. But I just felt like it was not that great. I'm sorry. And I think same with her recent release, middle grade, City of Ghosts. I didn't really like that much either. Next we have Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie and Barrie maybe Barrie. Unfortunately, I want to like this so bad because, you know, Peter Pan is such a classic tale. Everyone loves this story so much, but to be honest, like, it wasn't that good. And I think it was because I was bored and I didn't read like a middle grade. Maybe it's because it's more like a classic, that it's older, but it's supposed to be more like a children's story, and I felt like parts of it was even harder to understand. I don't think it was the language, like the old language. I think it was just how it was written. But yeah, the middle part was very blurry. The beginning and the end was pretty good, but the middle was just such a disappointment. I feel really sad I didn't like this book. Next we have The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho. This is the only book I read by him ever and probably will ever read. So I don't like his writing style because I think the story is fine, but it's a quite short book about like this man who goes on a voyage to find something that he dreamt he would find, and then it's just so like cheesy with like loads of quotes. Like, it doesn't even have things that you read between the lines. Like, it doesn't have anything where you have to think. It's just basically giving you loads of like philosophical quotes, and I don't like that writing style at all. I want things to be like hidden and like musty, and this was just way too like fairy tale-ish, I guess. Next we have The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. I think the only reason why this is on the list is because it's just such a well-loved book, and everyone who's read this book basically loves it. This is historical fiction taking place in World War II. I don't like historical fiction, and I don't really like reading about World War II, so I guess, like, why did I expect to like it? I don't know, but I think I just didn't like it because of those reasons. It was just a little bit like lackluster in the way that nothing really happened, but I did really like some of the characters in this book, but it was just not a book for me, unfortunately, but I did really want to like it. Next we have The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This is a recent release in fantasy in 2018, and everyone's been saying like this book is so amazing, but like I didn't like it at all, and I was so disappointed because it started out as a 5-star book. The first part of the book is so amazing. The second part of the book is so boring. And the third part of the book is like so brutal in ways that absolutely did not need to be. I felt it was completely unnecessary, and I can't even imagine what type of person you have to be able to write that kind of stuff in a book. So I can't with good conscience ever say like I like this book. I didn't like it. I'm not gonna read the second book in this series. I'm not gonna read anything else by this author. Yeah, I'm really sorry. It was just not good, and I have no respect for this book. I feel really bad saying that online, but don't kill me. Next we have Wild Card by Marie Lu. This is the second one in the Warcross series. I think this was just 2 books. So Warcross I really, really loved when I read it, but I also really liked young adult at the time. This one, probably because I've been reading so many adult sci-fi, I've been used to like really technical details a lot, and this one just didn't explain the Neuralink enough. Maybe it's because it was a while since I read the first one, but I was just kind of disappointed in the whole like sci-fi aspect of it. Yeah, it just didn't live up to the first one. And lastly, we have The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. I love Neil Gaiman's book. He's not one of my favorite authors of all time, but I really enjoy his books, and I think the concepts are really cool. This is about a boy who grew up in a cemetery, and he basically has some sort of like assassin after him during his whole life, but the cemetery is protecting him, and the ghosts that live there are basically brought him up. And I think that sounds so cool, but despite that, this is supposed to be a middle grade, and it did not read like a middle grade at all. I think it's too much like literally well written to be a middle grade. You know what I mean? I felt like it was kind of boring at times, and the writing didn't click with me. Unfortunately, that's a disappointment. So those are all the books that I were disappointed with in year 2018. I hope you don't get disappointed in any way. I mean, these are just like my opinion, so tell me below any books that didn't live up to the expectations you were hoping, and I hope you guys all have a magical day, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!